Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. Pepperoni is actually the Italian word for bell peppers. The sausage began to be called that in 1919 in the United States. If you order a pepperoni pizza in Italy, they will give you a pepper pizza. Despite what cartoons have made us believe for decades, mice do not actually like cheese that much. They prefer foods with higher calorie content, such as sweets and bread. They only eat cheese when they have no other option. There was a time when all residents of New York City had to move on May 1st if their leases expired. This law caused traffic problems and general chaos on that exact day every year. The green color that forms in the yolk of boiled eggs when they are cooked too long is ferrous sulfide. This reaction appears when the egg white releases hydrogen sulfide, which reacts with the iron in the yolk. The skin of hippopotamuses is extremely thick, about 1.38 inches. This makes it practically impossible for mosquitoes to bite them. The food that most people are allergic to is nothing more and nothing less than cow's milk. This allergy is especially common in babies and young children, although many outgrow it over time. It should not be confused with lactose intolerance, which is a digestive issue and not an immune system reaction to milk proteins. Mr. Potato Head was the first toy to be advertised on television in a commercial. The product was launched in 1952 by the company Hasbro and marked a turning point in advertising aimed at children. In its early days, it did not even include the plastic body, since the pieces were stuck into a real potato. In the year 2000, Taliban leader Mohammed Omar banned opium production in Afghanistan, which caused the global supply of heroin to drop by 70%. Alcohol bottles in cartoons were drawn with 3X on the label. This used to be used in real life as a symbol of the quality of the drink in the bottle. During the Prohibition era in the United States, each X indicated the number of times it had been distilled. But centuries earlier, it had been used in beers as a standardized grading system in England. There is a bird that has the same colors as Pikachu. It is the yellow woodpecker or cream-colored woodpecker. It lives in South America. Its plumage is yellow and it has red color near the mouth, similar to the circles on the cheeks of the well-known Pokemon character. This species lives mainly in forests and open savannas, where it feeds on ants, termites, and larvae that it finds under the bark of trees, using its strong beak to pierce it. There is an insect called the tree lobster that is almost the size of a human hand. It can only be found in one place, on the massive mountainous remains of an old volcano called Ball's Pyramid, off the coast of Australia. That is a funny name for an island. Penguin legs are actually longer than they appear. They only look short because of the amount of feathers covering them. Oh, and they have knees. These limbs are adapted for swimming with great efficiency, as their bones are denser than those of other birds, which helps them stay underwater and dive to greater depths with ease. Humans shed their entire outer layer of skin every 2 to 4 weeks. We shed at a rate of about 500 million cells per day. This is the main contributor to household dust. Much of that material ends up accumulating on surfaces and fabrics, where it serves as food for tiny mites. These microorganisms are not visible to the naked eye, but they thrive especially in mattresses, pillows, and carpets, where they find warmth, moisture, and a constant source of skin debris. Dr. Wu Zhongju from the University of St. Andrews discovered that approximately 1,500,000 diamond nanoparticles are created in a candle flame every second it burns. Unfortunately, they burn up during the process. However, it is believed that this discovery could lead to research on how diamonds could be created more economically. Magnolia flowers are so ancient that they evolved before bees. That is why they are pollinated by beetles, attracting them with special scented oils. These flowers have remained almost unchanged since the age of the dinosaurs. Designers of artificial flavors must have completed 7 years of training under a master flavorist in order to be hired. They are one of the most important jobs for food companies, since every product needs a flavor specialist. There is a restaurant called Sub 6, located at the Per Aquam Niama Resort in the Maldives, that sits 65.6 feet below the surface of the Indian Ocean. You can sit near floor-to-ceiling windows and watch schools of fish and more than 90 species of coral reef while you eat. 50% of people believe that bad weather can affect cloud storage services offered by many companies, but in reality, it has nothing to do with actual clouds. The 2 small holes in Bic pens are made so that the inside has the same air pressure as the outside, allowing the ink to flow normally. All 217 people who live in the town of Whittier in Alaska live in the same 14-story building. The structure has a school, a hospital, a church, and a grocery store. The first recorded blood transfusion occurred in 1667, when Jean-Baptiste transfused sheep's blood into a man. Both died. Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system. While on Earth, the average temperature is 64 degrees Fahrenheit, on Venus, it is 842 degrees Fahrenheit. Mainly due to its atmosphere that traps greenhouse gases, it is even hotter than Mercury, the planet closest to the Sun. Oil is not actually as black as it is shown in movies and cartoons. The color varies according to the concentration of hydrocarbon molecules and other compounds. It can even have a greenish. Between 30 and 39% of people in Vietnam have the last name Nguyen, which is the most common surname in the country. It comes from a dynasty. There are countries that face the problem of the extinction of surnames, favoring only the most popular ones. The iron in our blood and the calcium in our bones come from explosions of giant stars in the past. So it is true when they say that we are made of stardust. Astronaut Neil Armstrong's lunar suit was designed by the women's bra manufacturer Playtex. The company contributed its expertise in precision stitching and flexible materials, necessary to create a suit that was durable while still allowing movement. In fact, each suit included multiple layers sewn by hand, which helped protect the astronaut from extreme temperatures, radiation, and micrometeorites during the mission. At Don Mueang International Airport in Bangkok, Thailand, there is a full golf course located between two of its runways. There are red lights that warn golfers who are playing at that moment that an airplane is about to land. There are 21 different species of fish that can be categorized and sold as sardines, and companies are not required to specify on labels which species they contain. Sound can travel faster through solid objects than through air. This is because the molecules are closer together than in gas or liquid, allowing sound waves to move more efficiently. There are ants that can live up to 27 years. In reality, that longevity has been recorded mainly in queens of certain species, not in workers, which usually live much less. A castle was built in France using only methods that existed in the Middle Ages, in the 13th century. The project began in 1997 and was finished in 2024. Even the clothing of the people who contributed to the construction was from the medieval period, and the materials were obtained locally. To punish people who illegally cut down trees, in some forests they spray them with fox urine near Christmas time. The urine freezes and does not smell, but when the trees are taken home, it melts and leaves everything smelling disgusting. In 1872, Victoria Woodhull was the first woman to run for president. She ran as the candidate of the Equal Rights Party against Ulysses S. Grant. This was almost 50 years before the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote. If you built a tower of Lego bricks stacked one on top of another, the bottom brick would break and get crushed when the tower reached a height of 11,483 feet. Basically, it is very difficult to break a Lego brick. Leonardo DiCaprio turned down the role of Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars prequels. Although he met with director George Lucas, he decided not to accept the role because he felt he was not ready to take on a franchise of that magnitude at the time. The first Rocky movie, which eventually generated a multi-billion-dollar franchise, was produced with a very tight budget of a little more than $1 million in 1976. The protagonist, Sylvester Stallone, even had to sell his dog because he was struggling financially before the movie was sold. Fortunately, he was able to buy it back after the success of the film. Green olives and black olives are the same. The color depends on the stage of ripeness at which they are harvested. In the original book, The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's magical slippers were actually silver. They were changed to ruby red for the Technicolor film because it was believed they would stand out better against the yellow brick road. A man in China discovered that the tool he had used to crack nuts for 25 years was actually a live grenade. Leafcutter ants do not eat leaves. They actually cut the pieces in order to cultivate fungi, which later serve as their food. They are among the animals that have the most complex social structures in the world. In their colonies, there are different specialized worker castes responsible for cutting, transporting, cleaning, and caring for the fungus gardens. Dogs can be just as good at finding truffles as pigs. Nowadays, dogs are used more for that activity. Angela Stoger from the University of Vienna, Austria, discovered that giraffes can hum. The humming is a low-frequency sound at about 92 hertz. This type of vocalization occurs mainly at night, when the environment is quieter, suggesting that it may serve to maintain contact between individuals over long distances. Due to its low frequency, these sounds can travel better through the air and go unnoticed by potential predators. There are some official rock, paper, scissors leagues. In countries such as the United States and Japan, tournaments have been organized with formal rules, referees, and cash prizes. Although it seems like a game entirely based on chance, some competitors study psychological patterns and probabilities to try to anticipate their opponent's choice in successive rounds. After the movie Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark was released and became famous, the number of archaeology students in universities increased, as did the sales of archaeologist hats. Ants cannot get injured from falling from any height, even if they fall from an airplane. This is because they do not have enough mass, and their exoskeleton is strong for their size. Japan was invaded by the powerful Mongol army on 2 occasions, but both times they were saved by strong storms that struck those waters. After that, they called those storms the divine winds. In 1889, Queen Margherita of Italy ordered the first pizza delivery of all time. There is an exhibit at the Isle of Wight Zoo in the United Kingdom dedicated to poop. It features feces from the animal world and the human world. It also features fossilized poop called coprolites that date back 140 million years. One of the techniques the Mongols used during a siege was to launch catapults loaded with the bodies of people infected with the plague in order to infect the inhabitants and soldiers. It is considered bad manners to write with red ink in Portugal. You should not use it even to draw a heart instead of a dot over the letter I. In 1963, Chrysler was testing a prototype car powered by a turbine engine, which allowed it to run on all kinds of flammable fluids. When it was brought to Mexico, the president at that time, Adolfo López Mateos, drove it using only tequila as fuel. A pencil can write approximately 50,000 words before it runs out. The Hebrew language version of the book The Hobbit that was commercially used until the year 2012 was actually a translation based on the English edition made by Israeli pilots who were held captive in an Egyptian prison in 1970, who wrote it simply to pass the time. Butterflies like to drink blood because they are attracted to the smell of salt. I knew deep down they were evil. Cricket fighting is a hobby and a betting activity that was very popular in China since the time of the Tang Dynasty, about 1,000 years ago. The first cricket that stops fighting or leaves the battlefield loses. It is still practiced today as a tradition, and some enthusiasts breed and train crickets specifically for these competitions. In real life, Pocahontas was only 11 years old when she met John Smith. He was 28. The romanticized version emerged much later, especially in European accounts. 90% of all extinct species that have been studied were birds. The Indianapolis 500 has claimed more than 60 lives, at least one of them an innocent spectator. In 1931, an accident involving Billy Arnold sent a loose tire flying off the racetrack and across a street, where it struck and killed 11-year-old Wilbur Brink while he was playing in his front yard. In the Japanese animated film Akira, which was released in 1988, you can see a sign that says Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. As we now know, in that year, Tokyo hosted the Olympic Games. It is easier for dogs to understand voice commands if they are accompanied by body or hand movements. It is estimated that 20% of all Bitcoin in existence is stored in digital wallets that cannot be opened because their owners forgot the password. We are talking about billions of dollars that are permanently lost. Taylor Swift has mentioned that she does not read musical notation because she does not like the technical side of music. Among other musicians who do not know how or do not like to read musical notes are Paul McCartney and all the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Prince, Slash, Bob Dylan, and Elvis Presley, among others. Bhumibol Adulyadej, the former king of Thailand, was actually born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the United States in 1927. When he was born, the hospital room where he was delivered was briefly declared Thai territory so that he could technically be born on Thai soil. The first Japanese person who traveled to Mexico was Hasekura Tsunenaga, who arrived in Acapulco in 1614 with the purpose of establishing a commercial relationship with what was known at that time as New Spain. There are several monuments in his honor in Mexico. In art scrolls from the Edo period in Japan, it was common to depict popular flatulence battles. Unfortunately, it is a sport that stopped being practiced some time ago, but I think it should come back. In the episode of The Simpsons where Bart and his friends join a boy band, there is a scene where NSYNC appears as guest stars. When they were recording the voices, Justin Timberlake said he did not like saying the last word of the phrase because it sounded inauthentic. So as a joke, the production edited his dialogue to make it sound like he was repeating it after every line. There is a town called Zalipie in Poland where the vast majority of houses are covered in flower paintings. The tradition was strengthened to help with the negative psychological effects of the Second World War. Seeds that were 2,000 years old were successfully germinated after being found at an archaeological site in Israel. The result was a species of date palm that had been extinct. The seeds were discovered at the fortress of Masada, and after germinating, the plant was nicknamed Methuselah. It belongs to the ancient variety known as the Judean date palm. The two-letter abbreviation OK first appeared in the Boston Morning Post on March 23, 1839, as a joke. When it appeared in print, it was intended to be an abbreviation of all correct, the then humorous misspelling of all correct. It appeared in newspapers and in the presidential campaign of 1840, and after that, we have continued using it to this day. In 2012, after spending 5 days in prison, a Korean man named Choi Ga-bok, who had practiced yoga for 23 years, escaped by sliding through a small food slot at the bottom of his cell door while the guards were asleep. He was 5 feet 4 inches tall, and the slot measured 6 by 18 inches. Gal Gadot, the actress who portrays Wonder Woman on the big screen, served in the Israeli army for 2 years. She also won the Miss Israel beauty pageant in 2004. In 1848, the British East India Company sent a botanist to the forbidden part of China, where foreigners were not allowed to enter, to steal tea seeds that were only available in that territory and take them to India. A few years later, India became the largest tea producer in the world, and China's economy was ruined. No hurricane has ever crossed the equator. The Coriolis effect, caused by the rotation of the Earth, is what gives hurricanes their spinning motion. At the equator, this force is zero, which makes it impossible for a hurricane to cross it. Before mating, the female giraffe will urinate into the male's mouth. From the taste of her urine, the male can determine whether she is in heat or not. This behavior is part of a biological response known as the Fleeman response, in which the male analyzes chemical signals to detect reproductive status. After this, he usually lifts his upper lip and stretches his neck, a characteristic posture that helps him better process those stimuli. Marshmallows exist because of sore throats. For centuries, the sap of the marshmallow plant has been used to relieve pain. In the 19th century, it was mixed with egg whites and sugar for children with sore throats, and the recipe was so tasty that people turned it into a candy. Among the fictional languages that you can actually learn are the Elvish language from The Lord of the Rings, Klingon from Star Trek, Na'vi from Avatar, and Dothraki from the books by George R.R. Martin. Others, such as the languages from Star Wars or the Minions, are not considered complete, so you cannot learn them. 100 million years ago, there were primitive crocodiles that, in addition to being good swimmers, could gallop across plains like horses. Cats cannot clearly distinguish nearby objects and have difficulty focusing on them. It is 5 times worse compared to our visual ability, which would make them visually impaired if they were human. If you dove 20,000 leagues under the sea, like the title of Jules Verne's book, you would not only reach the bottom of the ocean, but you would pass through the entire Earth and reach halfway to the moon. 1 league is equivalent to approximately 3.4 miles, so the distance would be approximately 68,000 miles in total. The title of the book, of course, refers to the distance traveled at sea, not the depth. The smallest commercial flight in the world is from Westray Airport to Papa Westray Airport, between 2 small Orkney Islands north of Scotland. It is only a distance of 1.7 miles, and if the wind is ideal, it can take as little as 47 seconds from start to finish. In 1993, a Chinese man named Hu Songwen was diagnosed with kidney failure. In 1999, unable to afford hospital bills, he built his own dialysis machine, which kept him alive for another 13 years. Since then, a new medical insurance system was introduced in China that now covers such treatments. According to research, sweating when we are anxious or nervous is an indicator to other people that they should stay alert for any danger. It is an evolutionary physical characteristic, and also, when people are close enough, the smell activates the region of the brain that processes emotions and social signals. 25% of all the bones in our body are in our feet. Each foot has 26 bones, which adds up to more than 50 between both. This complex structure allows balance, support, and shock absorption when walking or running. In the 1930s, the technocracy social movement originated, which sought to replace politicians with scientists and engineers who could also manage the economy. However, due to everything that happened in the 20th century, this movement gradually lost strength. According to a study conducted in 195 countries over 26 years, there is no safe amount of alcohol that can be consumed that benefits the body, despite what many publications claim. During the production of champagne, the bottles have to be turned every day so that sediments do not accumulate. While in some factories this is done with machines, in traditional producers, there are people who must turn up to 40,000 bottles every day. After being eliminated from the show Hell's Kitchen, contestants are immediately taken to psychiatric evaluations and then to a house where they are treated with back massages, haircuts, and manicures. This is due to the intensity of the show, which involves long hours, high pressure, and constant stress. So the production ensures participants recover physically and emotionally after leaving. A handful of British companies now offer paid time off for pet parenthood to care for a needy animal. This policy, sometimes called paternity leave, aims to help employees adjust to the arrival of a new pet in the home, especially during the first days. Some companies have adopted it as part of their employee benefits to improve well-being and reduce stress, reflecting how pets are increasingly considered part of the family. In every movie of Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, someone can be seen losing an arm or a hand. The president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, explained that this is a tribute to the movie Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, in which the same thing happens to Luke Skywalker at its climax. In the 1970s and 1980s, radio programs and computer games were broadcast through sound, which people could simply record at home on a magnetic tape cassette and load into their computer. There are hundreds of stone slabs scattered along the coasts of Japan that give advice. These warnings include: high dwellings are the peace and harmony of our descendants. Remember the calamity of the great tsunamis. Do not build any homes below this point. And also, if an earthquake comes, beware of tsunamis. In fact, some of these markers are more than 600 years old. When he was a freshman in 1987, a man named Mike Hayes convinced a friend who worked at the Chicago Tribune to write an article asking millions of readers to donate 1 cent each for his tuition. Immediately, pennies, nickels, and even larger donations began arriving from around the world. After collecting the equivalent of 2.9 million cents, he graduated and paid for his degree in food science. In 1934, a $100,000 gold certificate bill was printed, but it was never issued to the general public. Used exclusively for transactions between Federal Reserve banks, facilitating internal transfers of money, it is the highest denomination of dollar bill ever made. Doorknobs made of brass disinfect themselves automatically after 8 hours, thanks to the oligodynamic effect. Saturn's moon, Mimas, closely resembles the Death Star from the Star Wars movies. But this is only a coincidence, because when the movies were made, this moon had not yet been clearly observed. The first country where women gained the right to vote was New Zealand in the elections of 1893. A $1 coin from 1794 was recently sold for $10,016,875. It is the most expensive coin of all time. A retired construction worker set out to build a replica of the Stonehenge monument in his yard without using modern technology, only simple wooden mechanisms. All of this was done to prove that the monument does not have a paranormal origin. Every year, approximately 6,000 Americans end up in the emergency room due to accidents while trying to open plastic packaging. The Parliament building in Germany has a glass dome on its roof that people can climb. This dome symbolizes that citizens are above the government, and that the government must be transparent. Most pearlescent effect makeup contains fish scales among its ingredients, specifically from herrings, which contain the substance that naturally produces that distinctive color. This substance is called guanine and reflects light, creating the iridescent shine. Today, there are also synthetic versions used in cosmetics to avoid the use of animal-derived ingredients. There are more than 10,000 species of birds around the world. This diversity makes them one of the most varied groups of vertebrates on the planet. They are found in almost every ecosystem, from tropical rainforests to deserts and polar regions. Until 2017, The country that produced the most gold was South Africa, but now the first place is held by China. In Switzerland, in addition to having underground shelters for all its inhabitants, there is also a strategic plan in which they can blow up strategic roads, bridges, and tunnels to block land access to the country. It was designed during the Cold War era, but it is still maintained today. On April 14, 1986, Bangladesh was struck by the largest hailstones ever recorded, weighing more than 2.2 pounds each and killing 92 people. Some of these blocks of ice reached sizes comparable to small balls, which increased their devastating impact. This event remains one of the most extreme cases of hailstorms documented, showing how unpredictable and violent nature can be. Smokers are 4 times more likely to have gray hair in their lives than non-smokers, so do not do it. It is dirty. Various studies have linked smoking to oxidative stress, which accelerates cellular aging and can affect hair pigmentation, in addition to being associated with other visible effects such as premature wrinkles and skin damage. Pontiac made a translucent car called the Deluxe 6 Plexiglass that was presented as a prototype at the 1939 World's Fair. Its exterior is made of acrylic, and it was not intended to be sold. It was only so people could see what cars looked like inside. The model that was built has been preserved to this day. Even though it is transparent, it has not been lost. Geckos have millions of microscopic hairs on their feet that have a special chemical composition that helps them climb walls and hang from a single foot. Actor Johnny Depp has a collection of Barbie dolls that began when he bought one for his children, but later became a hobby when he saw that there were special edition versions. Sony holds the record for the largest CRT television ever made. The PVM 4300 was built in 1989 and measured 43 inches, weighed approximately 440 pounds, and was sold at a price of $40,000. After years of being only a legend among retro television enthusiasts, the last known unit was located in Osaka, Japan, by the YouTuber Shankmods, who imported it to the United States and restored it. On June 10, 1986, Michelle Funk, 2.5 years old, from Salt Lake City, fell into a creek near her home. When rescuers finally pulled her out of the creek more than an hour later, she had no pulse and was not breathing. Doctors connected her to a cardiopulmonary bypass machine and re-warmed her blood. Incredibly, when her blood finally reached 77 degrees Fahrenheit, she woke up and is still alive to this day. In 2005, the company Golden State Fence in Southern California was hired to build part of the fence that separates the United States and Mexico. However, ironically, just 1 year later, in 2006, they were fined $5 million after it was discovered that they had hired illegal immigrant workers to build part of the fence. Director Guillermo del Toro lost his notebook in a taxi in London, where he had written down all the ideas for the movie Pan's Labyrinth. Because they had been talking about comic books and he had mentioned the hotel where he was staying to the driver, the notebook was returned to him 2 days later. Del Toro gave him a tip of $900 as a thank you. The restaurant TGI Fridays once created a promotion called the Mobile Mistletoe, in which they flew a drone around the restaurant with mistletoe so couples would kiss according to that tradition. The promotion was suspended when one of the drones cut off the tip of a person's nose. How sweet. Every second, an average of 100 lightning strikes hit the Earth. That is 8 million every day and 3 billion every year. In 1998, more fast food industry workers died than police officers while doing their jobs in the United States. The rock band from the 1980s Motley Crue always requested a boa constrictor among their performance requirements, in addition to the usual drinks and snacks. This was meant as a joke, but once a concert promoter actually showed up with one of those animals, according to an interview with bassist Nikki Sixx. Keanu Reeves used a percentage of what he earned from making the movie The Matrix to buy motorcycles for all the stunt doubles who participated in the production. There is a website where you can see in real time how much money Norway's investment fund has, which was started with money from the oil they discovered in the 70s and which belongs to every citizen of that country. The original filling of the Twinkie was actually banana-flavored. It was not until World War II that there was a shortage of bananas, so vanilla became the standard flavor. Even when the banana supply returned to normal, the vanilla version was already the most popular among consumers, so the company decided to keep it. And that is how it became the classic flavor known today. In 2006, a rare hybrid species of grizzly bear and polar bear called a pizzly bear or growler bear was confirmed in Canada. Global warming is causing polar bear habitats to melt, so they seek refuge elsewhere and end up mating with grizzlies. In the African country of Sierra Leone, people who want to obtain a driver's license have to pass a board game in which they answer questions about driving rules. This is done before taking a test with a real car. The board simulates traffic situations, and each square presents questions or decisions related to road signs, road safety, and behavior on the road. In Japan, you can buy eel-flavored ice cream. This flavor is inspired by unagi, a traditional dish that is usually grilled with sweet soy sauce. In some regions, it is offered as a tourist product or limited edition, combining sweet and savory notes. It has become popular in China to travel to South Korea for plastic surgery that is affordable and high quality. It has happened many times that people have problems re-entering their country because they no longer resemble their passport photos. Bill Hewlett and David Packard, the founders of the HP company, decided the order of their surnames with a coin toss. As we now know, Bill won that toss. Otherwise, the company would be called P8. At 62 years old, Alexander Graham Bell helped invent a boat that broke a speed record when it reached 71 miles per hour. The boat did not have a telephone. Vern Troyer, the actor who played Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies, had to perform all of his own stunts because, at 2 feet 8 inches tall, there was no stunt double of his size who could replace him. The first collaboration between Marvel and DC Comics was in a Wizard of Oz comic in 1975. When Stan Lee found out that the two companies were each working on the adaptation separately, he contacted DC so that it would be a joint effort. On average, a Bugatti owner has around 84 cars, 3 jets, and a yacht. If you want to see Galileo Galilei's middle finger, you can go to Florence in Italy. They have it on display in a museum, in case you want to know what it feels like to have the father of science insult you from the afterlife. Pearls form when oysters have grains of sand or debris embedded inside them. To relieve the pain and irritation, they cover it with layers of nacre, which is the same mineral that coats the inside of their shells, and over time, the pearl forms. The first Mortal Kombat game was created by only 4 people in 10 months. It was originally going to be called Dragon Attack, after a Queen song. Although the violence in the game was initially just a technical joke, it ended up completely changing the industry and led to hearings in the United States Congress that resulted in the creation of the video game rating system. Google was originally called Backrub. The name referred to its link analysis system, which evaluated how pages pointed to each other to determine their relevance. It later adopted the name Google, inspired by the word Google, which represents a 1 followed by 100 zeros, reflecting the enormous amount of information it aimed to organize on the web. The first ticket purchased for the first Comic-Con in New York was by George R.R. Martin in 1964. He was number 1 out of only 30 people. At that time, these events were small gatherings of science fiction and comic fans, far from the massive conventions of today that bring together thousands of people and major entertainment productions. Platypuses and echidnas do not have a stomach or an equivalent organ. Their beak connects directly to their intestines without passing through an area where digestive acids and enzymes are secreted. Scientists believe that this organ was lost during their evolution, and that they compensate for this absence by crushing their food with small stones or hard particles inside the mouth before swallowing it. In cultures that have not been exposed to Western music, dissonant chords are normal, and people perceive them as pleasant, unlike us. Actress and singer Barbra Streisand built a shopping mall in the basement of her house that is filled with items she has purchased. It is divided into different stores where she can go and re-buy any of her things. In recent years, a rumor has gained traction claiming that in China, there are artificial eggs made from sodium alginate, calcium chloride, and calcium carbonate, sold for less than 1/10 of the cost of real eggs. But it has been confirmed that this is a false rumor, and among the viral videos about it is one showing a slime factory in Korea. The depression in the facial structure of your skull, between your eyes and above the bridge of your nose, is called the nasion. Cosmetic surgeons rely heavily on the type of nasion a person has when planning a rhinoplasty, also known as nose surgery. The first president of Zimbabwe was President Canaan Banana, or simply President Banana. How appealing! He governed after the country's independence in 1980 and played an important role as a symbolic figure, while executive power mainly rested with the prime minister, in a political system that later changed over time. The Huns did not have a writing system, so everything that is known about this nomadic people so far comes from what their enemies wrote. All of them wrote that their appearance was monstrous, as well as their way of speaking and their behaviors. There is not a single bridge that crosses the Amazon River. Along its more than 3,730 miles in length, the enormous width of the channel, seasonal flooding, and dense jungle have historically made it difficult to build permanent infrastructure over its main stretch. There was a time when the Japanese government gave discount coupons for ramen to elderly people in exchange for surrendering their driver's license. This was done to prevent accidents. The transit of Venus is an astronomical event that occurs when Venus passes directly between the Sun and the Earth. It is like a solar eclipse, but the distance of Venus makes it appear only as a black dot crossing the visible face of the Sun for a few hours. This occurs every 243 years, with a pair of transits separated by 8 years, and then more than a century until the next pair. It sounds complicated, but it is very well calculated. There can even be a transit of Mercury and Venus at the same time, but it will take thousands of years for the next one to happen. According to Universe Today, the distance between the surface and the center of the Earth is about 3,963 miles. That measurement corresponds to the equatorial radius, since the Earth is not a perfect sphere, but slightly flattened at the poles. In comparison, the polar radius is a bit smaller, which means the distance varies depending on the point from which it is measured. This difference is small, but important for geographic and satellite calculations. Doctor Who was originally intended to be an educational series for children, with episodes set in the future to teach kids about science and episodes set in the past to teach them about history. In its early seasons, it included stories with basic scientific explanations and carefully recreated historical settings. Over time, it evolved toward a more adventure and science fiction-focused approach, although it retained educational elements in an indirect way. William Adams was an English navigator who arrived in Japan in the year 1600, becoming the first Briton to visit that country. Sometime later, he was also considered the first foreign samurai under his new name, Anjin Muda. There were more than 10 million koalas in Australia before British settlers arrived. Now there are only 43,000 in the wild. The drastic decline is mainly due to massive hunting for their fur in past centuries, habitat loss from urbanization and agriculture, as well as increasingly intense wildfires that destroy large areas of eucalyptus, their main food source. The last time Olympic gold medals were actually made of pure gold was in the Stockholm edition of 1912. In the Rio Games of 2016, the gold medals were made of silver and only contained 1.2% gold as plating. In the Chinese movie called The Wandering Earth, based on the novel of the same name, when the sun begins to lose energy, a project is launched to move the Earth out of the solar system using planetary thrusters powered by fusion energy known as Earth engines. Although it was not very well known outside of China, it became one of the 20 most successful science fiction films, grossing $700 million at the box office. Australia is home to golden silk orb weaver spiders, arachnids that are so large they can eat entire snakes up to 1.6 feet long. These spiders, known for their huge and strong webs, can trap not only insects but also small birds, bats, and even reptiles. Their silk is surprisingly strong and flexible, and it has been studied by scientists to develop stronger and lighter materials. The championship of the North American Professional Ice Hockey League did not have a winner in 1919. This was due to an influenza epidemic during the finals that left most of the players of one of the competing teams hospitalized. The series was being played between the Montreal Canadiens and the Seattle Metropolitans, and it was canceled before a champion could be determined. Hyenas, which are believed to be scavengers, actually hunt and kill 95% of their prey. The most studied species, Crocuta crocuta, hunts in groups using coordinated strategies and can travel long distances in search of food. Their powerful jaws allow them to crush bones and consume nearly the entire animal, which has contributed to their unfair reputation of relying only on carrion. When seatbelts began to be installed in cars in the 1940s and 1950s, people did not like them because they thought they could cause more injuries, even though the evidence clearly showed otherwise. Some people even cut them when they bought a car. The actor Brad Pitt appears for 2 seconds in the movie Deadpool 2. In exchange for his performance, he received a Starbucks coffee as payment, with the condition that it be delivered personally by Ryan Reynolds, who played Deadpool. Some years later, Reynolds returned the favor by appearing in Bullet Train. Originally, the traffic and train signal for go was white, and the caution signal was green. The choice of white for go caused many problems. For example, in 1914, one of the red lenses fell from its mount, leaving a white light exposed. This resulted in a train ignoring a stop signal and crashing into another train. So the railroad changed it so that green meant go and yellow was chosen for caution, mainly because it is the most distinct color from the other two. Despite having billions of dollars and being one of the richest businessmen in the world, the founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, is notoriously frugal. He lives in a small house, eats at IKEA, takes the bus, and only flies in economy class. His austere lifestyle reflected his business philosophy of reducing costs and avoiding unnecessary expenses, which also influenced the company's culture. Actor Heath Ledger kept a journal that he wrote as his character the Joker to prepare for his performance, where he included things the Joker would have found entertaining, such as injured doctors, geniuses with brain damage, landmines, and hats. This way of preparing, by getting into the mind of the character, is called the Stanislavski method. Because the rotation of the Earth changes over time, during the era when dinosaurs lived, days lasted only 23 hours. This is mainly due to the gravitational influence of the Moon, which gradually slows the planet's rotation through tidal forces. More than 60 million years ago, the year had more days than it does now, although each one was slightly shorter than today's days. It is estimated that poachers kill about 30,000 elephants each year to meet the global demand for ivory, according to a report from 2010. But as of July 2016, the United States has adopted a near-total ban on ivory. In fact, more than 1 ton of ivory was crushed in New York City as part of the United States government's plan to crack down on illegal trade. There is no official record that mentions the story in which an apple fell on Isaac Newton's head, inspiring him to write the theory of universal gravitation in 1666. In reality, he simply observed apples falling from trees while he was in the gardens of his family home and wondered why they always fell toward the center of the earth. There is a species of tiny and very cute antelope called the dik-dik. They are named after the sound they make when alarmed and only grow to about 15.7 inches in height. They live in arid areas of eastern Africa and usually form monogamous pairs that defend their territory. Despite their size, they are very agile and can detect predators very quickly thanks to their sharp sense of hearing. The high school teacher from San Diego, California, John Corcoran, kept his inability to read a secret for 17 years until he finally confessed and decided to learn at 48 years of age. After this, he wrote books and created a foundation to promote reading. It was once believed that kissing a donkey helped cure toothaches. This belief was part of ancient folk remedies in different regions of Europe, where certain animals were thought to have healing properties. In times when dentistry was very limited, people turned to symbolic rituals or superstitions in the hope of relieving infections or cavities, which, in reality, required medical treatment. In Iceland, it is illegal to give your child a name that has not been approved by the Icelandic Naming Committee. The last human structures to withstand the passage of time would be those carved into solid rock and those that are buried. For example, carved mountains, pyramids, tunnels, deep bunkers, and geological nuclear waste repositories. These things could last for millions of years. In contrast, the integrity of steel and concrete lasts only a few centuries. The Amazon rainforest is home to 427 mammals, 1,300 birds, 378 reptiles, and more than 400 amphibians. In addition, it hosts millions of insect species and an enormous variety of plants, many still unclassified. It is estimated that a single 2.47 acres can contain hundreds of different types of trees, making it one of the most biologically diverse ecosystems on the planet. Termites are being studied by scientists at the University of Connecticut and the California Institute of Technology for their ability to break down cellulose and generate hydrogen as a byproduct. Thanks to the microorganisms in their digestive system, these insects have inspired research into new ways of producing renewable energy. Although under experimental conditions they can generate interesting amounts of hydrogen, the exact figure varies, and it is not yet viable on a large scale, but their biological efficiency continues to be of great scientific interest. In 1945, a German submarine became unusable and had to be abandoned because of the high-pressure toilet inside it that was not operated correctly by the crew member who used it. The water leak and the release of gases forced it to rise to the surface, where it was captured by Allied aircraft. A man in San Francisco saved an endangered species of butterflies because he planted rare plants in his garden and then sent the cocoons to the Botanical Center, where they began to recover. In 2013, Google sent a single employee to Hashima Island in Japan to take street view photos. This island was once the most densely populated place in the world, But in the 1970s, people had to leave because the coal mine where most residents worked shut down. Today, it is estimated that more than 1 billion people in the world live with obesity, while around 800 million suffer from chronic hunger. Although both figures can vary depending on the source and the year, they reflect a global paradox in which malnutrition exists at two extremes: excess and deficiency, often within the same countries and even communities. The term public relations was invented by Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, to replace the use of the word propaganda, since it had a negative connotation due to the use the Germans gave it during World War I. Many pandas urinate while doing a handstand to mark trees. This behavior, observed in Ailuropoda melanoleuca, allows them to place their scent higher and thus communicate their presence to other individuals, especially during the breeding season. By lifting themselves onto their front paws, they make the signal more visible and longer lasting in their mountainous environment. Actress Winona Ryder spent 3 years of her childhood, from age 7 to 10, living in a closed community without electricity that could easily be classified as a cult. Her mother secretly showed her movies in a barn, one of the reasons she decided to pursue acting. 84% of the fat that the human body burns leaves the body in the form of carbon dioxide when we breathe. We are breathing out the fat that we later replace in the form of food. Meanwhile, trees are 50% carbon that comes from the carbon dioxide they absorb from the air during photosynthesis. In 2006, an analysis of cat tongues showed that they do not have taste receptors that respond to sweet flavors. Every feline, from lions and tigers to the domestic cat, cannot taste anything sweet. There is a tower with lights in Stockholm, Sweden, where anyone with a smartphone, through an app, can change the colors it displays. Its creators mentioned that it symbolizes the power of democracy and the power of the people. The Black Death that occurred in the 14th century caused the end of feudalism and serfdom in Europe. Because there were far fewer workers, wages increased, and at the same time, there were fewer travel restrictions. This led to the rise of a middle class dedicated to trade. Only one airplane was allowed to take off after all flights were banned in the United States on the day of the attack on the Twin Towers. It was a plane carrying an antidote for a man who had been bitten by a highly venomous snake. In 2014, China banned the use of wordplay in television and advertising, something common in the Mandarin language. They did this, according to them, to avoid linguistic chaos and preserve traditional values. The ancient Egyptians were already using metal long before the Iron Age, thanks to meteoric iron, primitive rock found in meteorites that contains metal without needing processing. Something similar happened in Greenland in South America, and it is the inspiration for Wakanda in Black Panther, where a civilization advances faster and becomes powerful thanks to metal from a meteorite. There is a complex in Finland called Kakslauttainen Arctic Resort, where your accommodations are glass igloos. These igloos are designed with special materials that prevent the glass from freezing, allowing you to observe the sky even in extreme temperatures. During certain times of the year, visitors can see the northern lights from bed, while the resort also offers experiences such as reindeer safaris and dog sled rides. In 2007, a man named Mick Warren Madden designed a device called the Aquatic Stroller that allows you to take your fish for a walk. I am not joking. This invention consists of a small portable tank with wheels that allows fish to be transported safely while the water is oxygenated, and it was created more as a creative curiosity than as a commonly used product. Elephants can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, just like humans, but it has been observed that they can recover by socializing more with members of the same species, which is known as social buffering. This represents a problem for elephants in captivity that are alone or that only live with one other elephant. On average, a hedgehog's heart beats 300 times per minute. This rate can vary depending on the species, temperature, and activity level, since during extreme cold or hibernation, its heart rate decreases drastically. According to a study, New York is the most linguistically diverse city in the world. It is estimated that up to 800 different languages are spoken among its cultures. Caffeine dependence was proposed by the American Psychiatric Association as a mental disorder, but it was not officially included in the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Brain mapping studies have not shown the typical activation of addiction circuits as happens with other substances. August 13th is officially Left-Handers Day. This date began to be celebrated in the 1970s to recognize left-handed people and highlight the challenges they face in a world designed mainly for right-handed individuals. Today, it is also used to promote more inclusive tools and raise awareness about differences in handedness. In Quebec, Sweden, and Norway, it is illegal to advertise directly to children. This is to prevent companies from encouraging children to beg their parents to buy things. These regulations are part of broader child consumer protection policies, especially in television and digital media, where commercial content aimed at young audiences is limited. Uranus and Neptune belong to a category of planets called ice giants, because less than 20% of their mass consists of hydrogen and helium, while gas giants such as Jupiter and Saturn are 90% hydrogen and helium. Pringles chips are shaped like a hyperbolic paraboloid. This geometric figure, also known as an anticlastic surface, gives them structural strength and allows them to be stacked uniformly inside the container without breaking easily. Producing an aluminum can from recycled materials uses up to 95% less energy than making it from scratch. This happens because the materials have already been refined previously, so to manufacture them a second time, fewer cleaning processes are needed, and therefore less energy. On the island of Crete in Greece, there are 40 million olive trees, approximately 60 for each resident. Coral is so similar to human bones in composition that it is currently used in some treatments to repair bones. According to a survey, 43% of all cardiologists in the United States are overweight or obese. Princess Leia's iconic hairstyle was inspired by the soldaderas, also known as Adelitas, Mexican rebels who fought in the revolution in the early 20th century. The reason why there is an emu and a kangaroo on the coat of arms of Australia is because they are animals that cannot walk backward, symbolizing that the country only wants to move forward, and also because they are native to that land. Some apples sold in supermarkets are not very fresh. In fact, they can be up to 1 year old since being harvested. The method used to preserve them is coating them in wax and storing them in refrigerators. In 2014, the government of India hired 40 people to dress up as monkeys and scare away real monkeys that had invaded the parliament in Delhi. These experts made the characteristic sounds of another species and successfully solved the problem. Almost 70% of Iceland's population has a Costco membership. Despite that, there is only one store in the entire country, which has 356,000 inhabitants. The first movie to feature digital water with simulated physics was Ants in 1998. Before this, digital fluid effects were modeled frame by frame. Detailed studies of fluid dynamics to achieve this were the work of scientists at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, United States. On May 8, 2010, actress Betty White, who was 88 years old at the time, became the oldest person to host Saturday Night Live. Her appearance was driven by a social media campaign started by fans, which generated massive support online. The episode had one of the highest ratings of that season and was widely praised, further solidifying her popularity among new generations. In Japan, there are owl cafes where you can interact with live owls while enjoying a drink or food. These places emerged as an extension of popular animal-themed cafes and usually have strict interaction rules to protect the birds. However, they have also sparked debate about animal welfare, since owls are nocturnal and sensitive to stress. The owner of the airline Virgin Atlantic, Sir Richard Branson, lost a bet with an executive from the airline Air Asia about the winning team of the Abu Dhabi Formula One Grand Prix in 2010. The loser had to dress as flight service staff on the winner's airline. The chess term checkmate comes from the Arabic term shah mat, which means the king is dead. The expression passed from Persian to Arabic, and then to Spanish through medieval influence in the Iberian Peninsula. In reality, its more precise meaning is the king is helpless or defeated, which reflects the final and inevitable moment of the game. On Pluto and on some moons of Saturn and Jupiter, there are ice volcanoes, or cryovolcanoes, that expel minerals which turn into frozen vapor. It is not known exactly why this happens, but it is believed to be due to gravitational forces. According to a study, half of Americans use subtitles to watch television. One reason for this is that digital recordings allow many overlapping audio tracks, which makes it difficult to clearly understand dialogue. The coldest inhabited place on Earth is Oymyakon in Russia. The average temperature there in January is minus 59.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and its record low is minus 95.8 degrees Fahrenheit in February. Despite those extreme conditions, the community remains permanently inhabited, with schools only closing in even more severe situations and vehicles often kept running to prevent fuel from freezing. In 1954, a man named John Thomas Doyle died after jumping from the Golden Gate Bridge. In his note, he left a brief message that said, "Absolutely no other reason except that I have a toothache." There are cicadas that, during the first stage of their lives, spend up to 17 years about 1 foot underground, without seeing the outside world, until they emerge to the surface, climb a tree, and become adults. During that time, they feed on the sap of roots and remain in the nymph stage until millions emerge at the same time in very precise cycles. The highest wave ever surfed was the size of a 10-story building. The record was achieved in Nazaré, Portugal, a beach famous for its giant waves generated by an underwater canyon that amplifies the power of the Atlantic. These walls of water can exceed 66 feet in height and require special equipment and jet skis so that surfers can position themselves safely. In the movie Spider-Man: Homecoming, there is a scene in which the villain Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, can be seen flying in front of the moon. This shot is almost identical to one from Batman from 1989, also starring Keaton, where the Batman symbol can be seen against the moon. Octopuses, squids, and salmon die shortly after giving birth. For the most part, males die soon after fertilizing the female's eggs, and females only live long enough to give birth to their offspring before dying. Between the years 1600 and 1800, lobsters used to be considered the cockroaches of the sea. They were fed to prisoners and servants, and used as bait for fish. In some regions, there were even laws that limited how often they could be served to workers to prevent abuse. Over time, changes in transportation and cooking transformed them into a food considered a luxury. The MTV channel began its broadcast at the first minute of August 1st, 1981. The first thing they aired were images of the first launch of the shuttle Columbia, which they used as a bumper until 1986, when it was removed after the accident of the shuttle Challenger. The country where the most board games are sold is Germany. There is a strong gaming tradition there known as Spielkultur, and each year, fairs such as the one in Essen are held, one of the largest in the world in this sector. Many influential publishers were founded in that country, and awards such as the Spiel des Jahres significantly boost the sales and international popularity of new titles. At the New Year Festival in Thailand, which takes place every April, people traditionally splash water on Buddha statues to symbolize purification. However, the tradition evolved into a massive water fight. People prepare with water guns, buckets, and hoses. At Crater Lake in Central Oregon, there is a floating tree trunk known as the Old Man of the Lake that has been bobbing completely upright in the lake for more than 100 years. It has been referenced in writings since 1896. Many countries send their fish production on transport ships to China so that it can be cut into fillets and processed, and then send it back. This only makes sense from an economic perspective, since it ends up being cheaper for them than doing it in their own territory. When Microsoft shut down the online multiplayer service for Halo 2, a player left his Xbox running for an entire month to prevent the shutdown, but they removed him anyway. On average, a traditional graphite pencil can write 50,000 words before running out, or it can draw a straight line 34.8 miles long. Pasca was a popular drink in the Roman army. It was made by mixing vinegar, water, and herbs. It was cheap, disinfected the water, and was refreshing under the sun. Soldiers drank it even more than wine, and generals and even Julius Caesar himself shared it to show humility. Its taste was sour, but its practical value made it the energy drink of the empire. During the Cold War, Russia continuously aimed multiple missiles at a highly trafficked building in the central courtyard of the Pentagon, which they believed was a top-secret meeting facility. It turned out that it was actually just a hot dog stand. This confusion was due to the large number of people who gathered there, which led to misinterpretations during a period of high geopolitical tension. Many of the costumes and uniforms worn by characters in the Marvel Comics universe are made with unstable molecules. A technology developed by Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four allows the fabric to withstand the harmful effects of the user's powers and the wear and tear of battles. On the border between Egypt and Sudan, there are approximately 1,243 miles of land that have not been claimed by either country, or by anyone. A man tried to claim it so his daughter could be a princess. The Chocolate River in the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from 1971 is actually a river made by mixing chocolate, cream, and 150,000 gallons of water. In 2012, Walmart abandoned a massive store of 124,490 square feet in McAllen, Texas. The city turned it into the largest single-story public library in the United States, and it has even won awards. Students who complete a doctorate in Finland receive a special hat and a sword at graduation. The hat symbolizes freedom, and the sword symbolizes the struggle of scientists to obtain and defend the truth. The Traub motorcycle, built in 1916, was discovered hidden behind a wall in Chicago and is considered one of the rarest motorcycles in the world. It was built by hand with very advanced features for its time, and none of its parts matched the other motorcycles that existed during those years. There is a village in France that generates 10% of its electricity consumption from a type of cheese called bouffer, using the leftovers from its production that create biogas. The man after whom Mount Everest is named, George Everest, did not want the highest mountain in the world to be named after his surname because it was difficult for Himalayan locals to write and pronounce, and all nearby mountains had names in the local language. Macarons, the French cookie dessert, actually originated in Italy, and it was not until the 17th century that they were brought to France by Catherine de' Medici when she married Henry II of France. It was not until the 19th century that they took on their sandwich form, joining two with cream in the middle. John Ratzenberger, known for his role as Cliff Clavin on the hit television comedy Cheers, is the only actor who has voiced characters in every Pixar film. A large portion of the food consumed around the world was first cultivated in the Andes region of South America, including potatoes, varieties of corn, beans, peanuts, strawberries, and many others. In 2014, scientists found a 30,000-year-old virus in the permanently frozen ground of Siberia. Despite all that time, the virus was still infectious and began attacking amoebas. There is a great risk that climate change could revive viruses from thousands of years ago. The favorite toothpaste color among people is blue. Other colors, such as red, have been shown to cause a drop in sales of this product. Blue is usually associated with freshness, cleanliness, and a minty sensation, which psychologically influences the perception of hygiene. Brands take advantage of these marketing studies to reinforce the idea of whiteness and purity even before the consumer tries the product. The term yak shaving is used to describe when the process of completing a task first requires doing other tasks that appear irrelevant and unnecessary to the main objective. It is used in management, in programming, or with any type of task. Journalist Sarah Bongiorni and her family tried to live without products made in China for an entire year and discovered that it was almost impossible. They documented their experience in a book called A Year Without Made in China, where they show how difficult it is to avoid products of Chinese origin due to their presence in almost every aspect of everyday life. In March 1974, local farmers in Shanxi province in China were drilling for water when they discovered an underground chamber containing more than 8,000 life-size warrior figures made of terracotta. They belonged to the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, who ordered the construction of the figures in the year 246 before Christ in preparation for his own burial, and he was only 13 years old at the time. Most civilizations of the ancient world had legends or myths about universal floods, except Japan, whose mythology focuses on the creation of islands, viewing rain and tsunamis as everyday forces rather than punishments. Singer Billy Joel has performed more concerts at Madison Square Garden than any other artist. Marlon Brando did not memorize most of his lines for his role in the movie The Godfather, so they resorted to writing them down and placing them in different places on the set so he could read them while filming. They even placed them on other actors. This technique allowed him to maintain a more natural and spontaneous acting style during the scenes. During World War II, prisoners who were taken to Canada were given board games and organized soccer tournaments and dances. They were treated so well that many decided to stay. There is a school in Russia called Ordinary Miracle that looks like a fairy tale castle. A man built it for his wife, who wanted to teach at a school where children would truly want to go study. The Cartier Crash Watch, manufactured in 1967, which looks like a watch painted by Dali, was actually inspired by a real car accident. That is how a watch ended up after being exposed to the heat of a vehicle fire. Although no further details are known and it is only speculation, its asymmetric design became an icon for collectors. Some special editions can sell for more than $100,000. New research published in the journal Meteoritics and Planetary Science confirmed that the blade of the dagger found in the tomb of Tutankhamun is made from materials of a meteorite. Scientists performed X-ray fluorescence spectrometry on it, which is a method used to learn more about the elements of an object and what it is composed of. It was found to contain iron, nickel, and cobalt, all materials found in pieces of space rocks. The first British spy, known as 007, was actually an astrologer named Dr. John Dee in 1560. He served Queen Elizabeth I as an advisor and used the symbol 007 in his secret communications, where the zeros represented the eyes of the Queen and the 7 his personal signature. In addition to espionage, he also contributed knowledge in navigation and English maritime expansion. The most downloaded mobile phone game of all time so far is Candy Crush Saga, with more than 500 million players. Call of Duty Mobile and Among Us follow in popularity in second and third place respectively. The game was released in the year 2012 by the company King and became especially popular for its system of short levels and rewards that encourage playing several times a day. Jellyfish are not considered fish because they do not have a brain, heart, or bones. They actually belong to the group of cnidarians and are made up almost entirely of water. Their nervous system is a simple network that allows them to react to stimuli, and some species have existed for more than 500 million years, long before the first fish. One day on Mercury is equivalent to almost 59 days on planet Earth. That is the time it takes to complete one rotation on its axis. However, one solar day, meaning from sunrise to sunrise, lasts approximately 176 Earth days due to its elliptical orbit and its unique resonance relationship with the Sun. The sooty tern is a bird that lives almost its entire life flying. It sleeps and eats in the air and only lands when it makes its nest and to care for its chicks. Tabula rasa, which in Latin means blank slate, was an idea popularized by the philosopher John Locke in the 17th century. He claimed that we are born without innate knowledge and that experience shapes our mind as if writing on an empty board. The expression was originally used by the Romans to describe wax tablets that had been erased for reuse. On May 15, 1809, a woman from Connecticut named Mary Keese became the first American woman to receive a patent. Her innovation was making a hat by weaving silk or thread into straw, creating an appealing look that became a passing trend. 1 pound of any combination of dimes, quarters, and United States half dollars is worth $20. This is because these coins were originally designed with very precise metal proportions and weight, which made their total value match when grouped by weight. Although they no longer contain silver today, many still maintain similar dimensions, so this curious equivalence still works in practice. The sounds made by former tennis player Maria Sharapova during matches were studied, and it was discovered that they reached levels of 101 decibels, which in comparison is louder than a motorcycle, a lawnmower, and even a small airplane. The reason tennis players make these sounds when hitting the ball is to generate more power, to distract, and even to release tension. Babies cannot taste salt until they are 4 months old. Before that time, they mainly react to sweet and bitter flavors, since their taste receptors are still developing. This initial lack of sensitivity also explains why breast milk, naturally low in salt and slightly sweet, is especially suitable for their earliest stages of life. The first household refrigerators were extremely expensive and even cost more than a Ford Model T car. When Freon gas was produced on a large scale, prices began to decrease. Before that, there were ice delivery workers. When the actor Steve Carell left the series The Office, the producers offered the position of office boss to James Gandolfini, the star of the series The Sopranos, but HBO intervened by offering him $3 million just to refuse the role. A company based in Silicon Valley called Got It developed an app with the same name. If a high school student got stuck on a question, they could send it to the app and have tutors bid on an answer. When the student accepted the offer, which usually cost around $1, they received a tutoring session of about 10 minutes through text message. When Shakira was in 2nd grade, she was rejected from the school choir because her music teacher did not believe she could sing and thought she sounded like a goat. Years later, that same vocal style would become one of her most distinctive and recognizable traits worldwide, helping her stand out in the music industry with a unique identity. Morocco was the first country to recognize the independence of the United States, and the Sultan of Morocco even informed all the Moroccan pirates that existed at that time not to attack American ships traveling across the Atlantic Ocean. This recognition occurred in the year 1777, and later both countries signed a treaty of friendship that remains one of the oldest still in force for the United States. 99% of Antarctica is covered in ice. In the areas where there is no ice, vegetation is beginning to appear as a result of climate change. There will be more and more plants in that place. Even though the movie Coraline was almost entirely made using stop-motion animation frame by frame with real models, there are some scenes with digital effects, such as the Starry Night dream sequence. Studies have been conducted that showed that most exercise machines in gyms, such as treadmills, display an incorrect number of calories burned with an overestimated margin of up to 80%. This happens because mass, metabolism, and personalized aerobic condition are not taken into account. They are only based on average measurements. The common housefly does not have a mouth. Instead, it has a feeding tube through which it vomits a drop of fluid from its stomach onto its food. It then sucks up the fluid along with the nutrients it dissolved, leaving behind a large number of germs. Cats are one of the few animals that domesticate themselves and approach humans on their own terms. This process is believed to have started thousands of years ago when early felines approached human settlements to hunt rodents, benefiting both sides without direct intervention. Unlike other domesticated animals, they retain much of their independent behavior and preserve highly developed hunting skills. In 2017, a note written by Albert Einstein was auctioned for $1.5 million. Written in 1922 as a tip to a messenger in Tokyo because he did not have cash with him, the note says, "A calm and modest life brings more joy than the pursuit of success combined with constant restlessness." In poor countries, bee fences are used to control elephants. Elephants are afraid of bees. This has helped reduce conflicts between elephants and people almost entirely. The founder of the famous Wrigley's chewing gum invented direct mail promotion. In 1915, he sent a small pack of chewing gum to every person listed in the telephone directory in the United States. Because blinking is necessary to keep our eyes moist, we miss 10% of everything we try to see. The Empire State Building in New York, inaugurated in 1931, had many empty offices during its early years. Almost 70% of the building was unoccupied. This was due to the economic damage caused by the Great Depression of 1929. It was not until 1950 that it began to be profitable. There is a museum dedicated to wax representations of disfiguring diseases. The Moulage Museum in Switzerland is one of them. Civilizations as ancient as the ancient Egyptians used wax to record how people looked when they died. In the early 1700s, moulages were a well-known teaching method for medical students and doctors. One day, some brothers managed to sell a fake artwork that they claimed was by the famous painter Francisco de Goya. They sold it for 1.5 million euros. Later, they realized that the money was fake as well. They were practically photocopies of bills. They found out when they tried to deposit them in the bank. How smart. A solid glass sphere can bounce higher than a rubber one if dropped, and a steel sphere beats both. This is because the more solid and less elastic they are, the less energy they absorb on impact, which allows more energy to be released. In the 1950s, they tried to domesticate foxes in the Soviet Union to study how humans managed to domesticate wolves. Because of this, there are now domesticated foxes that can be kept as pets in Russia. The cereal teff, considered a superfood, had its export banned for a time in Ethiopia in order to prevent food shortages throughout the country, as happened in Bolivia when quinoa exploded in popularity due to its status as a very nutritious food. To film the movie Babe, the Brave Little Pig, 48 different piglets were used, since they could only work for a few weeks before growing too large for the role. Animatronics and digital effects were used to synchronize the dialogue and create the illusion that there was only one pig and not 48 different ones. There is a toilet located 8,500 feet above sea level at the top of the Altai Mountain. It serves workers at an isolated weather station and is known as the loneliest toilet in the world. Due to the extreme conditions, access is usually by helicopter, and supplies arrive in limited amounts. In addition, its structure must withstand strong winds and below-freezing temperatures for much of the year. A man named Luke Irwin unknowingly came across an astonishing discovery buried beneath his newly purchased property in Wiltshire, England. While an electrician he hired was drilling into the ground, he struck a layer of intricate red, white, and blue mosaic tiles. It turned out that the Irwin residence was built on top of one of the largest and best-preserved Roman villas ever found in Britain. The slow loris is the only venomous primate. The origin of this venom is a toxin produced by a gland on its arm that they mix with their saliva before biting in order to defend themselves. They can also apply it to the fur of their young to protect them. Their bite can cause intense pain and severe allergic reactions in humans, and this animal moves slowly in order to go unnoticed among the branches during the night. There are ants that have door-shaped heads. They evolved this way so they can block the entrance to their tunnels to protect themselves from predators. In January 2016, a man walked into a Walmart dressed as a Walmart employee. He told the cashier that she was needed in the office, rang up the customers who were waiting, emptied the cash register, and calmly walked out. It is believed that he robbed 3 other stores in the same way. Chimpanzees have already discovered fashion. In Zambia in 2010, one was observed with a piece of grass in its ear for no apparent reason. After seeing it, the other members of the group began to imitate it. It was the first time something like that had been observed. The guitarist of the 1970s blues band Stone the Crows, Les Harvey, died while they were tuning their instruments in front of 1,000 people due to an electrical short circuit because someone did not properly connect the stage power. There was a meteorite shower that fell in Morocco in July 2011 that, after analysis, was determined to come from Mars. Most likely, they broke off from the red planet after the impact of an asteroid millions of years ago. Contrary to what is traditionally believed, the Renaissance painter Michelangelo did not paint the Sistine Chapel lying down on scaffolding. In fact, according to one of his early 16th century biographies, he painted it leaning backward, and in one of the painter's own poems, he mentions the pain he endured from maintaining uncomfortable postures for so long. After years of campaigning by conservationists, in May 2016, President Obama signed the National Bison Legacy Act, making the American bison the official mammal of the United States. It is the first official mammal recognized by the federal government. There is a goat in Utah named Freckles that had spider genes implanted when it was an embryo and is now known as the spider goat. She produces spider silk proteins in her milk, which are used to make biosilk, a material stronger than Kevlar. This development was carried out by scientists in biotechnology laboratories for medical and military purposes, as biosilk is lightweight, strong, and useful for sutures, regenerative tissues, and high-strength materials. Cats can develop an addiction to tuna and refuse to eat anything else. The reason why they like this food so much is because tuna and other fish disproportionately activate the umami taste receptors that humans also have, and it is, together with sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, part of the basic tastes. The inflatable fabric tube men that dance in the air and serve as advertising for many businesses are being banned in many cities because they interfere with visual harmony. Scientists believe that by the year 2050, the Dead Sea will be so salty that it will reach a point where the water will no longer be able to evaporate naturally, which will turn it into a kind of salty mud swamp. In 2014, Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett lost his phone, which contained more than 250 ideas for riffs and songs, and had no backup. That is why on the album they released shortly after, his name does not appear on any song. Stephen King was inspired by the traditional Norwegian tale The Three Billy Goats Gruff to write his novel It. In the story, 3 goats must cross a bridge where a troll lives underneath. Instead of a simple bridge, he imagined an entire city with something monstrous beneath it, in the sewers where terror dwells. Thus, the troll became the entity It, which usually takes the form of the clown Pennywise to frighten people. The American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology found that a bite from a Lone Star tick can cause you to develop an allergy to red meat, including beef and pork. If your nose becomes congested and starts to run after eating meat, or if you feel nauseous or develop a rash, you may have this allergy and should get checked for a tick bite. When ants die, they release a chemical that tells other ants to move the body to a kind of cemetery. If this chemical is sprayed on a live ant, the other ants will treat it as dead, regardless of what it does. This behavior helps maintain the hygiene of the colony, preventing disease, and is part of a highly organized pheromone-based communication system. Yucca plants can survive thanks to the yucca moth, and vice versa. They are dependent species. The small moth is the only one that can pollinate it and feeds only on that specific plant. In 1957, a United States Air Force pilot who was testing a prototype jet realized that he did not have interior cockpit lighting when the weather worsened. He managed not to crash and landed safely thanks to a Zippo lighter he had with him, which he used to illuminate the instruments. Most of the earliest pirate flags were red, not black. The red color indicated that there would be no quarter, meaning no mercy would be given if the attacked crew offered resistance. Over time, the black flag with skulls and symbols, such as hourglasses, became more common because it functioned as a warning. Surrendering could mean surviving without a fight. There are people today who specialize in recreating the purple pigments that were used centuries ago as a symbol of status, since dyeing fabric required collecting and processing thousands of snails. These pigments can be purchased online at prices of up to approximately $70,875 per ounce. Cornell University discovered that the tiger beetle runs so fast that it can no longer see where it is going. In fact, it has to use its antenna to avoid obstacles. During its bursts of speed, its eyes stop processing images continuously, so it moves in short segments, briefly stopping to reorient itself before continuing. This movement pattern makes it one of the most efficient predators among terrestrial insects. Miners in the Yogo Gold area in Montana, United States, noticed for 16 years that among the minerals they obtained there were small blue rocks, but they ignored them because they were focused only on the gold. Until one day, they decided to send a box of these rocks to be analyzed at a jewelry store, and they were informed that they were high-quality sapphires that did not even need special treatment to enhance their color, which is why they are highly valued. It is possible to create a plant that grows tomatoes above the ground and potatoes below ground by grafting the stem of a tomato plant onto the trunk of a potato plant. Both belong to the same botanical family, which allows them to share nutrients through the graft. This type of combined plant has been commercially developed and can produce both crops at the same time in reduced spaces. The record for the longest time living in an airport belongs to Bayram Tepeli, a Turkish man who spent more than 9,800 days at Ataturk Airport in Istanbul. He fled his hometown to go work at the site, and when he could no longer continue his duties, he decided to stay and live there. When the airport was closed to commercial flights, he moved to another nearby one where, to this day, he has spent more than 1,800 days. Until 1564, the French celebrated the New Year between March 25th and April 1st. But when the new Gregorian calendar was introduced, the festival was moved to January 1st. Those who resisted the change became the victims of pranks, including invitations to non-existent New Year's parties on April 1st, and that is why we celebrate April Fool's Day on April 1st. The manchineel tree, native to Florida, is one of the most poisonous trees in the world. In fact, just touching the rainwater that drips from its leaves will burn your skin. Its fruit, which looks like a small apple, can cause intense vomiting and serious damage if ingested. Even its smoke, when burned, irritates the eyes and can cause temporary blindness. In some areas, these trees are marked with signs to prevent accidents. A student in Germany found a 17th century painting inside a sofa that he bought at a second-hand store for the equivalent of $200. This painting, called Escape to Egypt, about 400 years old, was later sold for $27,630. In certain species of penguins, exchanges of food for mating opportunities have been recorded. Similar behaviors have also been observed in chimpanzees. In the case of primates, field studies have documented that some males share meat after a hunt with fertile females, increasing their reproductive chances. These behaviors suggest that the exchange of resources can influence complex social dynamics beyond simple instinct. Some years ago, most violin strings were made from sheep intestines. Today, they are rarely used, but some violinists prefer them when they want to achieve a brighter sound. When glass breaks, the cracks that form spread at a speed of more than 3,107 miles per hour, something that appears almost instantaneous unless it is observed with a high-speed camera. Sometimes black bears can hibernate while they are high up in a tree. This is especially true for females, which seek large hollows in tall trunks to protect themselves and give birth during the winter. Although their hibernation is not as deep as that of other animals, they can go months without eating or drinking, lowering their metabolism and using stored fat as an energy source. For centuries, gorillas were considered mythical creatures that only existed in explorers' accounts and legends. It was not until 1847 that the western gorilla was classified as a new species based on bones collected in Liberia, and later, more species were observed in the wild. The stickers you find on fruit are actually made of edible paper. The glue used to stick them on is food grade, so even if you eat one, you are completely fine. These labels are usually made of materials approved for food contact and use safe inks, and they also include codes that allow the origin and variety of the fruit to be traced for quality control. According to a study conducted in 2007 by Marshall McHugh, a researcher in the Department of Biological Sciences at the University of Arkansas, the intense hunger of snakes can cause them to actually digest their own heart muscle. However, immediately after a nutritious meal, snake hearts can quickly rebuild. The giant bucket wheel excavator, Bagger 293, built in Germany, is the heaviest land machine ever constructed. More than approximately 15,432 short tons and around 315 feet tall. It can move up to approximately 313,908 cubic yards of earth per day. Its movement is so slow that it requires continuous electricity and a crew that walks alongside it. Despite its size, it only requires 5 people to operate. Among the survivors of the Titanic was a Japanese citizen who, when he arrived in his country, was fired from his job because he was considered a coward for not dying along with the other passengers. In an interview, actress Scarlett Johansson mentioned that when they were filming the Avengers movie in New Mexico and she was portraying Black Widow in her characteristic costume, the heat was so intense that she began hallucinating during a fight scene. Filming had to be stopped for a few minutes. Hatsune Miku was not the first virtual singer. In 1997, Kyoko Date was launched in Japan as a computer-generated virtual idol who was treated as a real artist by her talent agency. However, she did not have much success. Unlike Hatsune Miku and other Vocaloids, Kyoko's voice was actually recorded by a real person. Kinder Surprise chocolate eggs, made by the Italian company Ferrero, are actually illegal in the United States. The United States Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act prohibits all candies with non-nutritive objects embedded inside. If you bring one into the United States, you could be fined up to $1,200 per egg. In 2016, a 41-year-old man spent 5 months in a New York jail without knowing that he could pay bail of only $2 and leave immediately. In the Middle Ages, Europeans used slices of hard bread called trenchers as disposable plates to hold food, and when finished, they would give them to the poor or eat them later after soaking them in sauce. Other cultures use bread as a utensil: injera in Ethiopia, roti in India, and tostadas in Mexico. The origin of the game hopscotch began in ancient Britain during the Roman Empire. The original courts were 98 feet long and were used for military training exercises. Soldiers would run in full armor and field packs to improve their footwork. Roman children drew their own smaller courts and added a scoring system, and that is how hopscotch was born and spread throughout Europe. In 1916, an amendment to the Constitution was proposed that stated that the decision to go to war would be put to a national vote, and anyone who voted yes would be required to enlist in the United States Army. Fortunately, it did not pass. In Australia, instead of having chocolate Easter rabbits, they created the Easter bilby as an alternative, representing an endangered species of marsupial called Macrotus, native to the country, which is also known as bilbies. The idea arose to promote its conservation, since introduced rabbits have caused significant ecological damage in Australian ecosystems. Charlie Chaplin's daughter portrayed Charlie Chaplin's mother in a film about the life of Charlie Chaplin titled Chaplin in 1992. According to a study that lasted 13 years and investigated more than 17,000 cases, cities that have physical barriers between the car lane and the bicycle lane had 44% fewer accidents compared to those that only have a painted lane. According to ophthalmology associations, taking regular breaks from screens can reduce eye strain, improve concentration, and lower stress levels. They recommend following the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes of screen time, look at something that is 20 feet away for 20 seconds. 20 feet is approximately 6.7 yards. As an additional fact, Liberia and Burma are already completing the change from the imperial system to the metric system, so only the United States will continue measuring things in feet. Because the primary purpose of marriage for ancient people was to produce children, they would bathe the new bride in symbols of fertility, such as grains of wheat. The Romans would bake this wheat into small cakes to eat in a tradition known as convivarium, which means eating together. Guests at the ceremony would throw handfuls of honey-coated nuts and dried fruits called confetti, and that is how the tradition of throwing confetti at weddings began. Christmas lights can be seen from space in different cities around the world, and it is estimated that light pollution during the holiday season is 50% greater. Satellite images have shown that in some cities, nighttime illumination increases noticeably in December due to decorations, shop displays, and additional festive lighting on streets and homes. There are more than 400 lakes beneath the ice sheet of Antarctica. Some could rival the largest lakes in the world. They remain hidden under miles of ice and stay liquid thanks to geothermal heat and pressure. One of the most well-known is Lake Vostok, which has been isolated for millions of years, making it a key site for studying extreme life forms and the conditions of other icy worlds. When large animals such as mammoths and the giant ground sloth became extinct, avocados no longer had a way to disperse and exist. Fortunately, civilizations already existed that began cultivating them, and that is why we can enjoy them today. Hurricanes that form north of the equator rotate to the left, counterclockwise, while those that form south of the equator rotate to the right, clockwise. In 1963, a man cut down a tree because a drill used to take samples and measure the effects of climate change had gotten stuck there. They did not study its interior. They realized that he had cut down the oldest tree that had been discovered at that time, at least 4,862 years old. In 2014, Taylor Swift accidentally released 8 seconds of white noise on iTunes. It immediately became #1 in Canada before it was deleted. The price per download was $1.29. In Portugal, there are two 18th century libraries that have bats inside them. They keep them because they help preserve the books by getting rid of insects that could eat the paper. However, keeping them requires daily cleaning by the staff of the place. In Mexico, artists such as painters, sculptors, and graphic artists can pay their taxes by donating pieces of art they create to the government. This program, managed by the Tax Administration Service, has made it possible to build a large public collection of contemporary art that is preserved and displayed in different cultural venues across the country. The main character of the comedy-drama series Succession, the media mogul Logan Roy, is based on the real-life businessman Rupert Murdoch, whose company News Corp owns media outlets such as The Sun, Sky News, and Fox News. In addition, he has 6 children who are currently competing to see who will inherit the media empire, just like in the series. Chinese mathematician Yitang Zhang was unable to find a job in his field after graduating and had to work as a delivery driver for a restaurant in New York. He later discovered the solution to a mathematical problem that had gone unsolved for 150 years and won many awards. The colors in the movie Her are taken directly from the color combinations of the smoothies from Jamba Juice restaurants. Director Spike Jonze says that he thought of that even before writing the script. The windows of the Burj Khalifa building take 3 months to be cleaned, but since they clean them 4 times a year, they practically never finish, and the cleaning never stops. In a place where a total solar eclipse has been observed, at least 370 years must pass before another one can be observed. Sigmund Freud, an Austrian neurologist and the father of psychoanalysis, loved cocaine so much that he used to give it to friends and family. During his early years of research, he even recommended it as a treatment for various conditions before its negative effects and high addictive potential were fully understood. The distinctive smell of some metals actually comes from the reaction they have with the dirt and fluids on our hands. Metal by itself has no smell. In 2018, in cities of Russia, Ukraine, Bulgaria, and Romania, orange snow appeared. Winter sports resorts displayed this unusual color, which was caused by sandstorms coming from Kazakhstan or from the Sahara Desert that accumulated in the sky and later fell together with the water in that area. Drowning in real life does not look anything like it does in the movies. It has happened many times that people are watching someone drown and do nothing because they do not realize that is what is happening. In most cases, there are no screams or dramatic movements, but silence and difficulty keeping the head above water. The person usually tries to breathe unsuccessfully and can barely call for help, so recognizing the early signs is key to reacting in time. 90 million years ago, snow did not exist at the Earth's poles, and it is believed that what is now Antarctica was a giant jungle, and what is now Alaska had a tropical climate. The resume, is a document a person uses to present their background, skills, and achievements. Its creation is attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, who wrote one in 1482 to a potential employer. It is usually shorter than a curriculum vitae. Elephants have the longest known pregnancy of any animal. lasting up to 680 days. In addition to being born with a highly developed brain, they also have a unique ovulation cycle and hormone levels unlike those of any other animal. Calves can stand within a few hours and recognize their mother by touch and smell, while the herd often participates in their care, increasing their chances of survival. In 1951, a poor woman named Henrietta Lacks died of cervical cancer, but her tumor cells were extracted and later discovered to be the first human cells that could thrive in a laboratory. Her cells have been the subject of more than 74,000 studies, many of which have provided deep insights into cell biology, cancer, vaccines, and cloning. If you play the sound of running water in nature through speakers near some beavers, they will begin to cover them with branches and leaves until nothing can be heard. This proves that the instinct beavers have to build dams is triggered by the sound made by flowing water. Kylo Ren's helmet in the Star Wars movies took inspiration from the practice of kintsugi for its design. This consists of repairing vases and plates with materials, such as gold or silver, so that the cracks become part of the object's history and are not seen as a defect. The cooking extruder machine uses heat, pressure, and mechanical force to cook, mix, and shape foods into a final, ready-to-eat product. It is used to make products such as cereals and snacks. However, the first of these machines to be used industrially was to make dog food by the company Purina. In 1987, a German shepherd dog named Gabby at a zoo in Belgrade saved a zoo employee by fighting and defeating an escaped jaguar. Because of this, a monument was erected in her honor. The incident took place at the city zoo and turned Gabby into a local symbol of bravery, remembered as an animal heroine. It is possible for a person who is bilingual or multilingual to be dyslexic in one language and not in another. Dyslexia is a learning disorder that makes reading and writing difficult due to problems relating words and letters. This can occur because each language has different rules between sounds and letters, so some writing systems are easier for the brain to process than others. South Africa is the only country that has developed its own nuclear weapons and then voluntarily dismantled them. It built several during the Cold War and eliminated them in the early 1990s, before the end of the apartheid regime. It later joined the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, allowing international inspections and setting a unique precedent in nuclear history. Explorers who saw giraffes for the first time thought they were a cross between a camel and a leopard. They called them camelopard for a time. Because the special editions released from the first Star Wars movie were altered at the request of George Lucas, adding digital effects, a group of fans who wanted the original 1977 experience carried out a direct restoration from copies of approximately 1.38 inches. They were cleaned frame by frame and scanned in 4K as a work of cinematic preservation that almost borders on obsessive. Koalas have fingerprints similar to those of humans. In fact, they are almost identical to human fingerprints. Not even careful analysis under a microscope can easily distinguish the circular ridges on koala fingers from ours. These markings help them grip eucalyptus branches and leaves while climbing, and they evolved independently, making them a curious case of convergent evolution. Author Ian McEwan once helped his son write an essay about one of his own novels called Enduring Love, but the teacher disagreed with his interpretation and gave his son a low grade. The case became known as a curious example of how even the creator of a work can be questioned in an academic setting. The creators of the detective comedy series Sledgehammer found out that it was not going to be renewed for the next season, resulting in a cancellation. Knowing this, in the final episode, the protagonist fails while trying to deactivate a nuclear bomb and destroys the entire city of San Francisco. Since that episode had very good ratings, they decided to renew the series. Then, the following season had to be made as a prequel with events that had happened 5 years earlier. The Crocodylus niloticus can hold its breath for up to 2 hours while waiting for prey to arrive. At rest, it significantly reduces its heart rate and remains almost motionless under the water, barely showing its eyes and nostrils. However, when it is active or fighting, that time is considerably reduced. This ability allows it to ambush its prey very efficiently in African rivers and lakes. There is a protest day in which 65 countries participate, called Buy Nothing Day, to stop consumerism. It takes place on the same day as Black Friday, the famous day when there are the most deals and people crowd into stores. The Mars Corporation prevented the famous M&M's candies from being used in the movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial because they thought it could scare children. In the end, Hershey's took advantage of the opportunity and promoted Reese's Pieces, which later gave them millions in profits. The largest painting on display at the Louvre Museum in Paris, and one of the largest in the world, is The Wedding at Cana by the painter Paolo Veronese, finished in 1563 and measuring approximately 22 by 32.5 feet. It is located in the same room as the Mona Lisa, on the opposite wall, and since almost everyone who enters that room goes to see Leonardo da Vinci's painting, they usually ignore The Wedding at Cana despite its size. In 2016, the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, approved a bill that legalizes forced entry into any closed vehicle to rescue a pet or vulnerable person believed to be in imminent danger of suffocation. This was necessary because up to 32 people die each year in Miami from hot car deaths. Adam Rayner, an Austrian man, is the only person in medical history to have been classified as both a dwarf and a giant in his lifetime. He measured 3.8 feet on his 21st birthday and was classified as a dwarf, but by the time he died at the age of 51, he measured 7.7 feet tall due to a growth spurt. In 1951, Mexico City suffered one of its worst floods, caused by the overflowing of the rivers that, at that time, ran through the area. This problem lasted 3 months, during which many people even had to use rafts to move around. On a corner in the historic center of the city, there is a lion's head that is said to mark the height that the water reached at that time. During the development of the game GoldenEye 007 for Nintendo 64, the developers wanted to implement a system to reload your gun that involved removing and reinserting the rumble pack from the Nintendo controller each time you needed to reload. Obviously, this was not carried out. It was not practical at all. The dodo bird, endemic to the island of Mauritius, became extinct only 80 years after being discovered for the first time. It was a bird that, due to the absence of predators and humans in its habitat, did not have the ability to fly. Plants generate a substance called petrichor on dry days, and when it rains, it is released into the environment. This is what causes the famous smell of wet earth when it rains. If the Apollo 11 moon landing hoax theory were real, then there would have to be at least 400,000 people involved and keeping the secret. The space program that carried out the mission, led by the organization NASA, involved hundreds of thousands of engineers, technicians, and contractors. In addition, universities and private companies participated, which would make it practically impossible to maintain a conspiracy of such magnitude for decades without credible leaks about Apollo 11. During Michael Jackson's performance at the Brit Awards in 1996, the lead singer of the English band Pulp, Jarvis Cocker, walked onto the stage and made mocking gestures because he disagreed with the staging that presented Jackson as a messianic figure. The incident dominated all the tabloids in the United Kingdom. According to the World Health Organization, it is estimated that 350 million people worldwide suffer from depression. It is also one of the leading causes of disability globally and is a major contributor to the overall global burden of disease. On their first day of school, children in Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic are given a cardboard cone filled with toys and sweets called a Schultüte. This tradition is more than 200 years old and symbolizes the beginning of a new stage, while also helping children face that day with excitement and less nervousness. Your nose requires more blood flow to maintain its normal temperature in the cold. This causes the blood vessels in this region to dilate and produce more mucus, which is why more liquid comes out of your nose when it is cold. In addition, cold air tends to be drier, so the body generates more moisture in the nasal passages to humidify and warm the air before it reaches the lungs. In 2014, rapper 50 Cent became the first artist to accept payments with Bitcoin and later forgot about it, until in 2018 he remembered and saw that he had 700 Bitcoin available, equivalent to $8 million at that time. And according to the current price, it would be almost $49 million. Teenagers in Bulgaria are vandalizing statues from the Soviet era to make them look like characters from popular culture. The Russian embassy does not agree and has ordered them to stop doing it. Coal power plants emit 100 times more radiation into the air than nuclear power plants that produce the same amount of energy. This is because coal contains small amounts of radioactive elements such as uranium and thorium, which are released as ash and particles into the environment when burned. The planet Neptune has the strongest winds in our solar system, with winds reaching up to 1,304 miles per hour. To put that into context, hurricane winds on Earth reach speeds of only 74 miles per hour. That is 18 times faster. These extreme currents occur despite Neptune receiving very little energy from the Sun, which has intrigued scientists for decades. In addition, enormous dark storms have been observed appearing and disappearing over time, some comparable in size to Earth. Toyota sold a version of the GT86 car in Japan that had plastic bumpers, basic rims, and did not have air conditioning or a screen. It cost $2,000 less. It was a special version for tuning enthusiasts so they could discard the cheaper parts and install customized ones. In a bubble bath, the water stays hot longer because the bubbles form a layer on the surface of the water that acts as a temperature insulator. In 2006, the FBI planted a spy in a mosque in Southern California and disguised him as a radical Muslim to eliminate potential threats. However, it backfired, as the Muslims in the mosque ended up reporting him to the FBI for being a potentially dangerous extremist. North Korea has an airline called Air Koryo. They have 6 aircraft in operation, and for years it was the worst-rated airline by the organization Skytrax, with 1 star out of 5, although currently its status appears as not rated. Most of its flights are domestic routes or to nearby cities in China and Russia, and a large part of its fleet is composed of old Soviet aircraft such as Tupolev and Ilyushin models. It is believed that all cattle that exist today come from only 81 cows that were captured and domesticated in the Asian region of Turkey 11,000 years ago. In ancient Greece, throwing an apple at someone was a symbolic way to declare love for that person. This is because, in Greek mythology, the goddess Eris became upset after being excluded from a wedding and, in retaliation, threw a golden apple inscribed for the fairest at the wedding party. It was then claimed by Aphrodite and thus became a symbol of love. The letters Q, W, and X were illegal in Turkey for more than 85 years. The ban began after the alphabet reform promoted by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk in 1928, when the country adopted a modified version of the Latin alphabet. These letters did not exist in official Turkish, but they did in Kurdish, which generated cultural and political tensions for decades. According to a study from a university in Italy, wearing sunglasses can help improve mood. This happens because when sunlight hits us, we make an expression that makes our brain believe we are angry. And with sunglasses, we can maintain the same expression. In the city of Baltimore, there are trash collecting boats called Mr. Trash Wheel, Professor Trash Wheel, and Captain Trash Wheel that collect thousands of pounds of garbage and also have funny eyes. The word for kangaroo in Mandarin Chinese literally translates as big rat. The term is da shu, an expression that emerged when early Europeans described the animal in Asia and compared it to a large rodent. It is a curious example of how some foreign names were adapted based on physical resemblance rather than scientific classification. According to a study that was conducted on European athletes at the Olympic Games, it was discovered that 16.5% of the participants have asthma. This percentage is almost double that of the general population. It is believed that this is because doctors recommend that children with asthma practice some kind of sport so their lungs become stronger. Queen Elizabeth did not need a passport to travel abroad, since all British passports are officially issued in her name. For this reason, she was the only person in the United Kingdom who could travel internationally without this document, while other members of the royal family did have to carry one like any citizen. McDonald's Hamburger University trains students in restaurant management skills and has more than 275,000 graduates. But it is no joke. With a 1% acceptance rate at its Shanghai campus, this intense 1-week training program is more exclusive than Harvard. Several civilizations saw the shape of a rabbit on the moon since ancient times. The Aztecs in the legend of the 5 suns, when the god Tecutitl becomes the moon as punishment. In China, the jade rabbit that prepares the elixir of immortality. And in India, the god Indra rewards the lunar rabbit for its selfless sacrifice. In one scene of the movie The Hobbit, the dwarves are covered with pounds of fish that, unlike what is done in other movies where they are only props, were real here. The actors mentioned that they could barely breathe and that the smell did not go away until a few days later. A woman named Chow Smith ran 7 marathons in 7 consecutive days on 7 different continents. Do not ask how on earth she did it, but she did it. In addition, it was to celebrate her 70th birthday, and you are sitting there watching a screen. According to the FBI, the most common time for a bank robbery in the United States is on Fridays between 9 and 11 in the morning. So yes, take care of your banking before that. This pattern is related to higher customer traffic and cash availability, which increases opportunities for criminals. There is a disorder called congenital amusia, where people cannot recognize common songs from their culture, cannot notice when notes are out of tune, and sometimes say that music sounds like banging noises. It is estimated to affect about 4% of the population and is not related to hearing, but rather to how the brain processes pitch and rhythm. Many people with this condition can enjoy other sounds, but have difficulty following melodies or remembering songs. The Aston Martin Lagonda of 1976 was the first mass-produced automobile to incorporate a fully digital instrument panel. There was one model with calculator-like liquid crystal displays and another with cathode ray tube displays, a technology taken from the F-15 Eagle jet. Even so, many customers reported that it failed too often, so it was not adopted in other cars. Cauliflowers can grow so fast that they sometimes make a cracking sound. This becomes more noticeable when there are sudden weather changes. Farmers are already used to it. The Alcubierre warp drive is a theoretical hypothesis proposed by the Mexican physicist Miguel Alcubierre. It is a type of engine that would allow travel faster than the speed of light by creating a bubble that contracts space in front of a ship and expands it behind, while inside the ship the speed of light would not be exceeded, so it does not contradict general relativity. In Futurama, it is mentioned that the Planet Express ship works in a similar way. The band Nickelback got its name from Mike Kroger's experience as a cashier at a Starbucks. Customers would pay $1.50 for a coffee that only cost $1.45, so he always had to give them back a 5-cent coin, known as a nickel. In 2014, the Department of Transportation in Colorado was forced to change its mile marker from 420 to 399.99. just to get people to stop stealing the sign. The reason was that the number 420 is popularly associated with cannabis culture, which caused the sign to be constantly taken as a souvenir or joke. The colored squares or circles that appear on product packaging are the different tones that were used in the printing process, and they help quality inspectors, through a scanner, to more easily see if a batch has a problem with any color. This way, they can more easily identify the machine or the ink that needs to be repaired. The Singer Building in New York, which was demolished in 1967, became the tallest building in the world when it was constructed in 1908. It reached an approximate height of 613 feet and served as the headquarters of the Singer Sewing Machine Company. Although its record lasted only 1 year, it marked the beginning of the race to build taller and taller in Manhattan. Box jellyfish, also known as sea wasps, are the most venomous animals on the entire planet. If a person comes into contact with them, they can die in less than 4 minutes if they do not receive immediate treatment. It is possible to cry in outer space. However, your tears never fall. They simply stay there like a bubble under your eye. In microgravity, the liquid sticks to the skin due to surface tension and can grow to cover part of the eye, causing blurry vision. Some astronauts have commented that the sensation is uncomfortable, since you cannot easily wipe it away without the drop moving across your face or into your nose. The deepest part of the ocean is the Challenger Deep, located in the Mariana Trench, with a depth of close to 36,100 feet. To understand how extreme it is to access this place, more than a dozen people have walked on the surface of the moon, while only a small number of explorers have descended to that point, due to the enormous pressure and the technical challenges involved in reaching such depths. Goats are immune to different poisonous plants, such as poison ivy, which makes them a good alternative to use instead of herbicides to clear land. They are often rented by the hour for this purpose. In addition, they can feed on more than 100 different types of plants, including brambles and dense weeds, which is why they are also used to reduce the risk of wildfires by removing dry vegetation in areas that are difficult to reach with machinery. Harley-Davidson motorcycles are twice as likely to experience mechanical issues as the other 3 leading brands on the market. Even so, they remain the most famous motorcycles. Much of their success is due to their strong cultural identity, their distinctive sound, and the loyalty of their community of followers. For many, they represent a lifestyle associated with freedom, the open road, and American tradition, rather than just a means of transportation. In 1999, Coca-Cola invented a vending machine that could adjust its prices based on temperature, allowing prices to increase on hot days. Nobody liked the idea, and Pepsi mocked it by saying that it was exploitation of their customers. The machine was discontinued. The total amount of fuel used by all the cars in all the races and practice and qualifying sessions of a Formula One season that lasts 1 year is less than the fuel used by a 747 airplane on a normal transatlantic flight from London to New York. And hundreds of flights like that are made every week. In 2009, in the jungle of the Philippines, scientists discovered a new species of pitcher plant. It is the largest carnivorous plant ever discovered. It is called Nepenthes attenboroughi, named after Sir David Attenborough. Other carnivorous plants eat things like insects and spiders, but this one is so large that it actually eats rats. This is a Caucasian shepherd dog. Males can reach up to 198 pounds and are a popular dog breed in Russia, bred to hunt bears. They have also been historically used as livestock guardian dogs in mountainous regions, where their size, strength, and dense coat allow them to withstand extreme climates and face predators such as wolves. Clarence Nash performed the voice of Donald Duck for more than 50 years, taking part in 120 short films and movies. Characterized by the sounds produced by air trapped in the mouth rather than the vocal cords, in order to keep the character consistent, in addition to English, he also performed the voice in other languages, most notably Spanish, which he even knew how to speak, while for the other languages he used the phonetic alphabet. Seahorses can move their eyes in different directions independently, like chameleons. This helps them better scan their surroundings and watch out for predators. In addition, this ability allows them to locate small crustaceans and plankton while remaining almost motionless, camouflaged among seaweed and coral. Their independent vision compensates for their slow swimming, since they are not strong swimmers and rely more on stealth than speed. In the 1960s, the Beatles tried to buy the rights to make a movie of the book The Lord of the Rings, and they had already convinced Stanley Kubrick to direct it. However, author J.R.R. Tolkien refused to sell them. Moles like to have underground storage areas where they keep up to 1,000 earthworms as if it were their pantry to eat later. They can do this because their saliva has a compound that paralyzes the worms. For a time, Pepsi was the sixth most powerful naval force in the world. This happened because of a deal the company made with the Soviet Union, which paid with 17 submarines, 1 cruiser, 1 destroyer, and 1 frigate in exchange for selling Pepsi in that country. The payment was made this way because they did not have access to United States dollars. Later, Pepsi sold the fleet to a Norwegian scrapyard. WD-40 was invented by Norm Larsen in 1953. He was trying to develop a formula to prevent corrosion, a task accomplished by displacing water. WD stands for water displacement, and 40 refers to the fact that he finally succeeded on his 40th attempt. On Valentine's Day in 2014, a group of single men in Shanghai bought every odd-numbered seat for a screening of the movie Love in Beijing. They did this to prevent couples from sitting together, as a show of support for single people and just to be annoying. In 1870, in Belgium, they tried to create a letter delivery service using cats to replace carrier pigeons. But in the test they conducted, which consisted of reaching their home from the other side of the city, one cat took 4 hours, while others took up to 24 hours, so the plan was discarded. More than 60% of Chinese consumers say they're willing to pay more for products labeled Made in the United States. This preference is often associated with a perception of higher quality, stricter safety controls, and brand prestige. In categories such as food, technology, and baby products, the country of origin strongly influences the purchase decision, especially among the growing urban middle class. Mean world syndrome is what people experience when they believe the world is a more violent place than it really is because of the sensationalist news that media outlets publish every day. All disposable batteries lose up to 25% of their power after 1 year, even if they have not been removed from their packaging. In the 11th century, the Persian mathematician Al-Biruni calculated the radius of the Earth with great precision, and noted that between Europe and Asia there must exist a large, still unknown landmass to balance the planet. Although he did not speak directly about America, his geographic reasoning anticipated its existence centuries before others, such as Christopher Columbus, did. There is a cricket known as the Kilauea lava cricket, or dark lava cricket, that lives exclusively in recently solidified lava flows produced by volcanoes in Hawaii. They arrive even before any type of plant life. When enough time passes and animals and plants begin to populate the area, the cricket simply disappears. 1 in every 2 million lobsters is blue, but 1 in every 3 million can be yellow-orange, and even rarer are white lobsters. Each of these colors appears only about once every few years. These unusual shades are usually due to genetic variations that affect the pigments in their shells, and when they are caught, many fishermen choose to return them to the sea because of their rarity, turning them into small local celebrities. There are stainless steel soaps that, when combined with water, can neutralize strong odors such as garlic and fish, but you can get the same result by rubbing your hands with a spoon. However, they do not clean like real soap. They only serve to eliminate odor. The first time a computer-generated sequence was used in a movie was in Vertigo from 1958. For the introduction, a World War II computer was used that had been designed to aim at moving targets in the air, which made it possible to generate animated curves based on mathematical equations. In the movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens, Mark Hamill, who plays Luke Skywalker, was the same age as Sir Alec Guinness when he portrayed Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original Star Wars film. The first movie in which actor Jackie Chan appeared, Big and Little Wong Tin Bar from 1962, was considered a lost film because no copies existed. However, to the surprise of many, in 2006 it was uploaded to YouTube in its entirety. In South Korea, Pepero Day is celebrated every year on November 11th, when people give boxes of Pepero sweets, which are cookie sticks with a coating similar in flavor to Pocky. It is a tradition similar to Valentine's Day that began as a marketing campaign, and it takes place on the 11th day of the 11th month because the sweets have the same shape as the number 1. The use of psychedelic substances, such as LSD, has been studied in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, with some promising results in certain cases. For example, Yehuda Nir reported that, after participating in this type of treatment, he was able to sleep without nightmares for the first time in many years. There is a pizzeria in Alaska that delivers pizzas by airplane. They do this so that the most isolated communities can have this dish, but they do not do it one at a time. They only make one trip of 150 pizzas each week. Author J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter series, also writes crime novels under the name Robert Galbraith. The books she has published under her pseudonym include The Silkworm and Cuckoo's Calling. In 1983, a 61-year-old potato farmer named Cliff Young, who was not an athlete, won the ultramarathon of 544 miles from Sydney to Melbourne simply because he kept running while the other competitors slept. Whales can carry up to 992 pounds of barnacles attached to their bodies. They also like to attach themselves to turtles, and even to dolphins. The television show All in the Family was the first primetime program to feature the sound of a flushing toilet. For much of television history, it was taboo to even show a bathroom, let alone include any kind of bathroom sound. This show helped change that. There is a crater on Mars that looks like a giant happy face emoji. In the Watchmen movie from 2009 and in the graphic novels, this crater appears as a location.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.